Thanks, Ciarán, and I'd like to welcome this motion and the good work of Deputy O'Riordan in relation to this. I think it's a good track record in relation to, dealing with the issues around drug reform, and obviously that's very, very welcome. And reading the motion is you don't have to, cry in despair or put your head back up and keep pushing for reform in relation to this issue, because it's a damning indictment of successive governments that this was allowed to happen and continues to happen. And it's extremely somber when that 10,000 people over the last 25 years have died of drug-related deaths. And these were all at one stage brothers and sisters, mas and das, friends, family, of everybody. And addiction is very complicated, and it can be messy, to say the least. But I'm sure lots of them people could be still alive if it wasn't for a different policy. I'm sure of that. I have friends that would definitely be alive today if it wasn't for marginalisation, social deprivation. But when you throw the depths of despair around addiction, it's one way to hell. And that's what communities have suffered, families, individuals. And I'm sure, Minister, these people that have succumbed to addiction, some of them could be still alive today if there was a different policy. I'm 100% certain of that. And if you look at different jurisdictions around the world, particularly Portugal, people are saved. If you can save one life, literally one life, that's worth it. It's worth changing the laws if you can save one life. And that's what it's worth fighting for. Minister, I know this government have paid a lot of lip service in relation to a health-led approach. And obviously that I suppose, the terminology is welcome, but does it actually counter the situations where people find themselves in, where they're criminalised, people are brought through the criminal justice system, and people are marginalised? It simply doesn't work. And the evidence points that we need a different narrative around that. I mean, the proliferation of drugs since the 70s has incrementally increased. The availability of drugs has incrementally increased, not only in Ireland, across the world. It's worth hundreds of billions of dollars per year in relation to the demand. But the laws that we have at the moment, which emanate from 42 years ago, are not a deterrent for people to take drugs or people to supply drugs. Over 80% of the people that are in our prisons at the moment are there for drug-related crime, wherever, from the whole pyramid, from the very top to the very, very bottom. Now, doesn't that say to you that the present laws do not work? And we need to do something different. And that difference is, obviously we can talk about health-led approach, harm reduction and all that, but we need to change. Attitudes in this country have changed. They've changed dramatically. You just look at what's happened the last 10, 15 years in relation to a woman's right to choose, same-sex marriage. All that has changed. So social advancements have moved on in Ireland. But sometimes this place hasn't moved on, People's attitudes now, I think, to drug reform have changed. They do not see criminalising people for personal drug use literally legitimate anymore. So there has to be something very, very different. And I believe this institution is way behind the public opinion in relation to this issue. And I think the days of prohibition and the days of the Misuse of Drugs Act, which were, as I said, 42 years old, are coming to an end. We have to do something very, very different. That's starting from changing the laws around drug use. And Minister, I don't know if you're going to be in this position in 6 weeks' time. Obviously, and you might have a new minister. We don't know. But it emanates from political choice. Why has successive governments continued to allow this to happen? It's largely been Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, right? Yeah, that's the question I always ask myself in relation to, what's in this motion. Why has this been allowed to happen? There's vested interests and so forth. But at the end of the day, there is no political will or no political courage to change what's happening. Because what's happening is largely it's working class communities. If all these people, I guarantee you, the vast majority of people who have died are from certain postal codes in Dublin and different parts of Ireland. They're largely working class people, right? If this was different, if this was in a different postal code, if different Dublin, it'd be a different response. Completely different response. Completely different response. That's why I think you need political will, because if you don't have political will, people don't have a voice. And the people that have succumbed to all this horribleness around addiction have been let down by successive governments and lack of political will. But that can be changed. That can be changed, and it can be changed in here. We need political will from yous, from the government, to say, look, this can't continue anymore. We have to do something very, very different. Look at other countries. They're changing the models around drug reform. They've seen in 10 decades of absolute things that don't work. They have to change, and countries in Europe are changing. Countries in the United States, Canada, and Asia, and even South America, which has been, terribly affected by the kind of drug wars, are changing their policies. They've realised that the present status quo doesn't work. Because as long as the status quo goes on, people will be criminalised, people will die. But now, why allow that to happen? Because the people that have really kind of, I suppose, have been enriched by this, as a tiny, tiny percentage of people that have enriched themselves through masses of profits of money, and that what comes with that is grotesque violence that is subjugated against communities. So we need to do something, Minister. We need to do something. I really do believe the days of the Misuse of Drugs Act are coming to an end. It may take another couple of years, and we'll look upon the last 4 or 5 decades as a failure, like an absolute failure. And generations will say, look, at least this generation that exists today done something about the madness that has happened in the last 4 decades. Thank you.